Back in 1991, one doctor claimed that drinking red wine was good for you every single day. And then a plethora of studies came out trying to prove that point, and most of them were funded by the alcohol industry. And so all of this kind of myth of, moderation so good for you, it's good for your heart, all this like red wine and stuff like that came out, and it became really imbued into our conscious and to our subconsciouses as well as a society. And so what started happening in the 2010 era is that these studies were starting to be scrutinized, and they found so many flaws. Like they were comparing sick people to healthy people, just like the amount of alcohol wasn't measured, it was just so many flaws that they started to remove all those flaws statistically. And they found there is actually now safe benefit to alcohol after that.
Karolina Rzadkowolska, I really hope I've gotten that right. It is a pleasure to welcome you to the Inner Entrepreneur podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. I am so excited to be here today.
Well, I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I'm apprehensive about how people may react to it because we, the Irish, are well known for the love of alcohol. I mean, well, that's my perception. I don't know how the rest of the world perceives it, but I would have always thought growing up the Irish love their alcohol. Um, but I spent some of the year in Spain, and I've noticed the Spanish also love their alcohol, and the French love their alcohol. And this weekend, I was in Dublin City because a friend of mine from Florida was over with six of his buddies on a golfing trip, and I met them in Dublin just because I hadn't seen them in a couple of years, and I think they'll do more drinking than golfing. So I've come to the conclusion that there's a universal love of alcohol, and we're going to have a conversation with alcohol because you've written a book that caught my attention called Euphoric, subtitled Ditch Alcohol and Gain a Happier, More Confident You. So I'm not sure how many people will be listening to this cursing you, or many people go, hey, that lady's really got something to talk about. So tell me about your own history with alcohol, please.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love what you're saying because I think a lot of people, find themselves in a relationship with alcohol from
Yeah.
culture, from their social, events and all this kind of stuff. And there obviously is a desire to drink. People are ready and excited for happy hour and, they want to go out golfing with their buddies. But to just say love, I think is actually a non-truth. I think we all have a love-hate relationship with alcohol. And
Mm.
what that means is that there's always a negative side to it as well that we're not as honest about as a society. Now, obviously, we have the kind of stereotype in our world that, there's the alcoholics who are losing their jobs and, living under a bridge. And we think, okay, well, I don't have that many negative,
Mm.
consequences happening. But, who actually wakes up after drinking feeling good the next day? I don't even think it's biologically possible for someone to wake up the next day after drinking and feel like $1,000,000, right? And so it's like this thing where sometimes, maybe we do want to be drinking less for our health, or we want to be drinking less for our productivity or our goals. And yet when we do find ourselves in these social occasions, maybe we have a few too many and we wake up the next day almost cursing ourselves. Like, why am I here again in this pattern where, I'm not living up to, the standards and the dreams that I have, and I'm kind of just feeling blah on a Monday morning. And that's where I was. That's where I found myself. So I started drinking as a late teenager, and I really started drinking in college, and it was a total party lifestyle. Like there were no boundaries around it. It was that kind of, drink any day of the week type of thing with your friends. And I didn't really notice that many of those kind of quiet intuitions about alcohol not serving me. I wasn't as intuitive back then, and it was just, so young, so free type of a feeling, right? But as I grew up, I really, wanted to become a healthier, more mindful person. And so what happened was that as I got married, as I started my career, as I really started settling down as an adult, drinking became something that I only did on the weekend. I only tried to do socially. Obviously, I drink sometimes at home too with some wine and Netflix, but I tried to make it more adult, more responsible. And so Monday through Thursday, I lived this very healthy lifestyle. I was going to yoga classes, I was drinking green juices, I was journaling, but then every single weekend I drank. Every single weekend. There was not one weekend I missed, right?
Mm.
It was your weddings, it was your happy hours, it was sushi nights, it was opening a bottle of wine with some Netflix every weekend. And on Monday mornings, I always felt like I had taken 2 steps forward in my healthy lifestyle during the week and 5 steps backward over the weekend. And it was this cyclical gnawing at me. Like literally, my intuition was just telling me, you're made for so much more than this, so much more than this pattern. I wasn't satisfied in my career at that point. I was feeling like I was living a very ordinary, mediocre life. And so even though I had thought that the only type of person who would ever, think about removing alcohol was someone who identified as an alcoholic and needed to go to AA meetings, I finally heard about Dry January, which actually was born in the UK as a health campaign, to just, go a month without alcohol. And
Mm.
that kind of opened my eyes of like, oh, I could just take a break. I could just try, a month without alcohol without having to explain it to all these people. And that was the first time as an adult that I really, tried life without alcohol. And the month was amazing. That's not to say I didn't have cravings or miss it sometimes, but the pride I felt every day, the deep sleep I had every day, the energy I woke up with, the new joy that I was finding, and new activities and pleasure, it was amazing. And then come February, I didn't really think I could continue. I had this rule in my mind that normal adults drink. If you want to be normal, you have to drink. And I did drink a few times in that February, and it was such a letdown, such a letdown. Even one or two drinks I noticed would make me feel so foggy and groggy the next day. But even in the moment, like 20 to 30 minutes after I had that drink, I noticed my mood would crash. I would feel frustrated, cranky, just moody, picking fights with my husband. I was like, wait a minute. In dry January, I was so euphoric, going on hikes, feeling like I'm communing with nature and the trees and the clouds. And here I am having a drink that's supposed to make me happier and have be fun. And I'm feeling more apathetic and more cranky than ever. Something's not right here. And that's when I decided to take another break from alcohol and really go deep, 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 not only into the science behind what alcohol is doing to our bodies, but also all of the beliefs that I might have had up until that point of what alcohol is doing in the positive that may not have been true anymore for me, both from a physical level, but also from the things that I picked up from when I was younger. Like alcohol makes me more confident, it makes me more talkative, it makes me all these things. And I teared down everything that I formerly believed about what alcohol was doing for me in the positive. And what happened was I completely lost my desire. After that, my confidence, my courage surged. And I went from living this mediocre life, hanging out in a cubicle for my career, to launching a global company, leaving my day job, writing a best selling book. And now I travel the world with my husband, leading our movement. And I am so fulfilled. And at the end of the day, I think alcohol was that weekend reward to a life that I didn't actually find fulfilling. And that's why, my purpose isn't just to help people stop drinking. It's like, what is that a band-aid for? What is that a band-aid for when there's such a deeper sense of joy and meaning and purpose that we can find when we reevaluate that and really see what your soul wants and what it came to this planet to do?
Wow, there's a whole lot there. Where do I start? I think, well, there's so many questions come out of that. One of the things you've hit on there is why we drink, and I think, and there'll be a lot of people listening to this going, oh, yeah, I hear what Caroline is saying, but for me, I do get these benefits from it, and I do enjoy this, and I do enjoy that. Um, what were some of the beliefs well, two things. What were some of the beliefs you had about alcohol? Like it gave you confidence, it made you relax, it maybe made you more social. What were the beliefs you had that you found that just weren't true? And when you're coaching um, clients, what are the most common beliefs that they have that just turn out to be myths, and the opposite is true?
Yeah. Yeah. I find a lot have to do either with like beliefs about what alcohol is doing to you, both physically, and then also beliefs about what alcohol is doing that almost negate your natural ability to be like that. So, in the first category,
Yes.
a lot of people, for example, believe alcohol relaxes them, it's the stress reliever. And when we actually look down to what the biological effect of alcohol is doing, yes, it's a depressant, so it's slowing the central nervous system down, but at the same time, our body counteracts that and we release norepinephrine, we release cortisol, stress hormones in response to alcohol. And so sometimes if someone's really acute to this, you could have one drink and then 30, 40 minutes later, you'll feel those stress hormones. You feel a little bit wired on edge. And most people reach for another drink at this point. That's why one drink often begets another. But if you keep drinking all night, you'll wake up in the middle of the night, oftentimes 3 a.m., 4 a.m. wake up calls. And you just wake up being like, why? Like everything is wrong at 3 a.m. You can't fall back asleep. Your heart's pounding. You feel that shame. Or if you do sleep through the night, a lot of people feel more anxiety the next day. And so I don't see alcohol anymore as a 20-minute experience. I see it as a 48-hour experience. And we have to be really honest with ourselves the entire effect of it. And so biologically, alcohol actually produces way more stress in your body than any of that relaxation effect. And most of that relaxation effect is often due to what our brain perceives as the ritual of alcohol. So there's this really cool study I'll tell you about that illustrates this point. So they found, a group of people that just got off work, and they put actual brain nodes onto their brains to be able to measure their brain activity. And everyone was very stressed out, right? So it's very chaotic brain waves. And they all sat down at a restaurant bar and they all ordered a drink. And now the brain waves completely relaxed,
Mm.
just nice and smooth. But here's the kicker: nobody drank the drink yet. They just put in an order. That's it. So it goes to show that it's like the anticipation of this reward is what's really relaxing us and telling our body it's okay to slow down, work is done, it's time to decompress, than the actual biological effect of alcohol, which actually stresses us out after that 20-minute buzz wears off. So that's just like one of fascinating thing. When you really learn the science behind that, the illusion gets popped. You're like, whoa, this wasn't what I thought it was. So
Mm.
another example from another category is believing that alcohol makes you more of a superhero in some way, shape, or form, right? I grew up very introverted. I grew up very shy. I'm still much an introvert. And so as I, went to college, I became this extroverted version of myself when I drank. I thought it made me more popular, just so much easier to talk to people. And so I relied on it socially like a crutch ever since then. Now, there were nights that alcohol embarrassed me. There were nights where alcohol gave me nice little wine stains on my teeth. Like, it wasn't actually feeding into my confidence. It was actually detracting it from it over time, making more insecure. We always say something out of character, perhaps, if we've been under the influence. But then what I really noticed was that every single time I had to reach for a drink socially, I'm literally telling my subconscious mind, you are not good enough on your own. You don't know how to talk to people. Nobody likes you, but here, have this drink and then you'll be better. And so, how is that actually ever raising my confidence? That is actually, in essence, lowering my self worth over time. So, this one took a little bit more psychological digging and like a way to kind of counteract and change it. But I ultimately concluded alcohol is only making me more insecure over time. And the only way I'll ever become more confident socializing without a drink is to practice it like a muscle that had never been worked out before, and to find the strength within. Because confidence, these kind of intrinsic things, confidence, courage, intuition, creativity, they will never be found outside of us in some kind of, beverage or solution like that. It is always something that's found within. And that literally skyrocketed my confidence once I went through that process.
I think for a lot of people, confidence is a huge part of it. And maybe that's why a lot of people start. You talked about drinking in your teens. I think that's why a lot of people start drinking in their teens because we're evolving, we're coming out into the world. You're starting dating, all of these sort of things, and so you enter into this world, but you're still in that those years of a lack of self confidence because you're changing so much and you're trying to attract the opposite sex, all of these things, and you walk into a bar or something, and of course you feel like I'm the idiot here, all this sort of stuff, and you reach for a drink because it's a crutch. And I hear what you're saying. The problem is that you'll never stop for a moment and actually address the underlying issue, which if you address it, you'll find it's false or you develop. You're never giving yourself the actual opportunity to develop that confidence. You're always smothering it. So it's really standing in your way, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And what's so interesting about what you're saying is so true. We are these young, bumbling, insecure people trying to
Yeah.
navigate the world. And that's when we learn to drink well before our brains are fully formed, right? But now we're not those people anymore. So now we're these adults that have created these lives and, have done so much. And we're still using a coping tool that we picked up as this young, immature version of ourselves without reevaluating, is this still really serving the person I'm becoming? Is it serving the person I'm trying to become? And especially as an entrepreneur, our world is filled with so much personal development and growth and, being able to have the capacity to reach these bigger goals in business. And oftentimes we're still using this coping mechanism we picked up when we're 16, 17 of this immature, less evolved version of ourselves. So it's almost like sometimes I've never been like a prohibitionist or like, let's make alcohol illegal or anything like that. But it's like, is it an outdated version of ourselves? And is it sometimes time to let it go to be able to grow into the version that we're really meant to be in this phase of our lives? And I think that's what the alcohol free movement today is so interesting. So I'll just share real quick. The alcohol free movement is what I consider this new reevaluation, a sober curiosity that's going around that's separate from a recovery or AA style
Yeah.
type of thing, right? So it's just like it's giving more permission to people to be able to question alcohol without any labels or anything around it, with more flexibility. You don't have to go to alcohol free forever. You could just try it for a few months or something like that. But I think with that alcohol free movement, it is kind of just that really deep questioning that you're talking about of like, well, what serves me in this phase of my life? Even though I had a lot of fun partying in college and such and such and such, but is it really, especially as we get older? I mean,
Well, I think that's a really important distinction, and a it, I kind of wasn't aware of that until I dug a little bit deeper into your work, and you make it very very clear. This is not you're not aiming yourself towards alcoholics. You're not aiming yourself towards people who should be in AA or in recovery. That's not your audience. Your audience is people who are what you might say social drinking, who don't perceive themselves as a don't perceive themselves as having a drinking problem in their lives are probably working very well. Uh, and the alcohol free movement, what I think it does is it gives people permission. It shows them an alternative. It says, I suppose it gives them a banner to go, well, there is another option, and that option may be choosing to be alcohol free.
yeah. And I needed that permission so badly because when I was probably 7 years sober curious, where I knew that it wasn't making me happy. I didn't like how I felt on those Monday mornings, but I just didn't see the alternative, because that's all I had seen and grown up around was this like, oh, you hit rock bottom and you're drinking vodka in the morning and all this kind of very stigmatic things. And if you don't want to claim or call yourself that, then you drink because that's just, there's no excuse not to drink.
Yeah.
Even in Europe, when you're pregnant, you still have to drink, right? Because there's just like literally, there's not a social excuse to say no, thank you. It is such a expected ritual in our society, right? And so I think this alcohol free movement is like, I don't have to claim that I have a problem just in order to like take a break or stop or try it or whatnot. And how complicated a relationship with alcohol is a very gray area. So yeah, we have people on the like, extreme end. I would call them that black category who it's like, yeah, you would say that's a textbook alcoholic. They're drinking in the morning, they're physically addicted, all this kind of stuff. But then there's this huge gray area where, how much people drink at the very black level is a lot. But in this gray area, it is still above the health guidelines, right? And for women, that is actually very low. It is in a way that it's just not making you feel proud of yourself, or you do feel like I feel gross the next day or things like that. And the percentage of people who drink above the health guidelines is around 50 to 60%. So it's just goes to show that most people who call themselves regular drinkers are probably in that gray area. And it's only the people who very occasionally drink are more in that, okay, you're under the health guidelines. It's kind of that moderate drinking. Because even moderate drinking, they say like, oh, you can have a glass or two a day. According to your brain, according to a lot of the immune systems and functions in your brain, like most functional doctors are saying, no, that is not correct. You know what I mean? That's based on really flawed studies from the past. The less you drink, the better and the healthier you're going to be.
During the week, watching TV, and my wife, and I was talking to her about this conversation coming up, and so I looked up what the alcohol recommendation for women was. Now, I can't remember exactly, so maybe you can correct me. It was something like 17 units of alcohol. I can't remember, maybe you can tell me what it was. But whatever it was, I was absolutely shocked at how high the recommended safe level of alcohol was. So I don't know if it's different in the US to Europe, but can you tell me what the guidelines are for safe, what's considered to be safe levels of alcohol?
What's so interesting since 2018, like the highest levels of studies and most, boards across say there's no safe level anymore and that any reduction in alcohol is good. Canada just changed their guidelines to say that no more than 2 drinks a week would be considered less like safe, and zero would be considered the safest. 2 drinks is still, in the US it's still 7 a week, and then so we have a different than the units that you do. It's kind of double, I believe,
Okay.
with the units versus the thing. But even 7 drinks a week is like now they're changing that. And with our new Surgeon General and kind of administration, they're trying to change it to lower it as well too. So it's really fascinating to see that a lot of the science that came out, this is kind of crazy, but Back in 1991, one doctor claimed that drinking red wine was good for you every single day. And then a plethora of studies came out trying to prove that point. And most of them were funded by the alcohol industry. And so all of this kind of myth of, moderation is so good for you, it's good for your heart, all this like red wine and stuff like that came out. And it became really imbued into our conscious and to our subconsciouses as well as a society. And so what started happening in the 2010 era is that these studies were starting to be scrutinized and they found so many flaws. Like they were comparing sick people to healthy people, just like the amount of alcohol wasn't measured, it was just so many flaws that they started to remove all those flaws statistically. And they found there is actually now safe benefit to alcohol after that. Because, what it does, even for heart health, for example, actually drinking raises your blood pressure. Drinking can create more inflammation. My cholesterol went much lower after I stopped drinking than before. Drinking also makes your heart pump harder and faster without the exerted exercise. So it can lead to things like heart failure and just a bigger heart over time. And, the way that it can constrict your, arteries and stuff like that. It's just fascinating when you really look into the science. And it's just like a knowledge of a lot of other things where, we're kind of led to believe something is healthy and it's not really healthy for you. And
Mm.
so it's not to say that, you're going to die because you drank one glass of alcohol a night, you're probably fine. But I think it's really being able to recognize that some of these myths about how good alcohol is for you were always based on bad science. And so it's kind of just like any other of those things that aren't probably the best for us, like sugar or, fast food and stuff like that. How much of it do you want in your life? And a lot of people find with alcohol compared to other food groups or anything like that, because it does change your consciousness. You do usually want another drink after you have the first one. It's a lot easier to just be a little bit more like um, strict in just saying no thank you at all. Like the most people find that much easier. They're not playing the mental gymnastics when you tell yourself, oh, I'm gonna have one drink tonight, and you go out with your buddies and they're drinking one, but you haven't even had dinner yet. You start like negotiating with yourself, like, when do
Mm.
I have the one drink that I'm allowed? It's just the mental gymnastics and the battle that goes over it. A lot of people find it just easier to be abstinent with it. But there's the sober curious movement, which allows all the possibilities of, I drink maybe occasionally, or I take 6 months off at a time, or I take a year off at a time. So, like any permutation, basically, of how you want to make it work for you is totally, acceptable and very much valued, I think, in this like new curious dialogue, which I think is really, really fun. But what's interesting to me is what happens when you don't evaluate it. We've been conditioned since we're little kids to drink. We saw our parents drinking, we saw it all around us. It was ingrained in our brains that that was what marks an adult. And, for us, that's how I prove my adulthood. It's belonging for us, it's acceptance for us. It could be independence, rebellion, sophistication, glamour, status, all these things. And most adults, unless you go through a pregnancy, most adults, when they start drinking, never take a break from alcohol, which is really fascinating to me because then you don't know how you actually feel health wise. You don't know how your moods naturally feel. You don't know your mental health. Alcohol affects like our dopamine levels, our serotonin, our GABA. And so it's just like a fascinating thing to be like, what if most adults don't even know what it feels like to be an adult without it as a constant presence in their lives? And that's the thing to try, because I then don't have to recommend it myself anymore. You'll be so pleased with the benefits that you're going to love it so much too. You know what I mean? So that's what I think is very interesting.
Yeah, you're obviously talking from experience living in the US and I'm in Europe, but there's a similarity there in that it's almost like a rite of passage. When you're young, you're not allowed to drink alcohol, and then you get into your teens, and depending on your parents' rules, you transition to the day I'm allowed to drink alcohol. Um, and so I think because of that, people feel like it's a mark of my womanhood or my manhood or whatever that I can drink alcohol, and that's dangerous because we've now linked alcohol with stepping out and growing into the world, but that is pervasive in my view. Like that is so much embedded in our culture that it's very difficult for young people to avoid that and feel like they're still children if they're not drinking.
Yeah, it is. And I actually did a class recently where I was found pictures of myself as a 4-year-old child for my birthday party. And there's a birthday cake in front of me. I'm about to blow it out. And there's, champagne on the table. And obviously, I'm not drinking it. It's for the adults. There's adults around and everything like that. But all these cues that we've been getting all of our life to inform this message and then this final graduation that you get, and then this sense of like, who am I if I don't drink? Am I
Yeah.
this boring non-drinker? Am I the person with the problem? Am I like righteous and religious, right? Like there's so much that goes into our belief system. So it's really interesting how it's not that much of a habit change as much as it is a mindset change.
Yeah, I grew up in a family of non-drinkers, and that was because my mother's father was an alcoholic, and so she grew up seeing really the downsides of alcohol. And so when when she was, and she's passed away many years ago, but when she chose my father as her husband, big part of it was that he didn't drink, because she was going, I've lived a life of having an alcohol. She loves her father, but she saw the damage it did to the family. So she chose a man who didn't drink. And then as she was raising us, um, we heard all of the stories of alcoholism. We heard all of the dangers of drink. So I grew up with a very negative bias towards drink. Then when I met my wife, and so now I'm entering her family as well. She grew up in a family of people, a family, they didn't have drink problem, but they certainly were social drinkers. It was something that so when we married, we came together with two different perspectives. At that stage, I'd started to drink, but I would drink very little, the occasional glass of red wine. That's still where I'm at. Um, but she grew up in a thing where socializing is drink. So we had these completely different viewpoints, which is fine until you have children. And so then you have to have rules around the children. But in fairness, my wife was also fairly strict in the idea that, you shouldn't drink until you're an adult. So we came up with this notion that our sons should not drink until they were at least 18. And at 18 years of age, they could make their own decisions. But the interesting thing is, in those intervening years, probably from about 15 to 18, as they were going to school events and that sort of stuff, that concept was challenged on many occasions, because there were a lot of parents who felt that their children should be allowed to drink, and would challenge us because we wouldn't allow our kids to drink. And obviously, our kids were challenged. But every time my kids would talk about drink, I would say, I'm happy to have a conversation about alcohol as long as you realize we're talking about a mind altering drug. So if we can have a conversation with a mind altering drug, I'll have the conversation. So it was I had a very extreme view, and my wife had a different view. And we felt to some degree it was healthy to have that conversation with them so they could see both sides. But certainly, I witnessed a lot of people who then felt they were doing something positive, and maturing their children by 16 years of age, introducing, like it was a rite of passage, we'll now introduce you to the world of alcohol. It made no sense. It still makes no sense to me. But if your parents are conditioning you that this is part of your, now 15, 16, you can have a drink, what other worldview can you have?
And I've worked with women who feel like they're letting their dads down by stopping drinking.
Yeah,
How ironic is that?
isn't it?
Yeah. And it was like a way of bonding and a way of like, let me show you what adulthood is like, and what meaning our tender brains make of those kinds of things. So that's what I think is really fascinating about alcohol, is that it really isn't just this habit that, I'm just going to do habit change. I'll just drink something else instead of this. It's like, let's explore all this meaning, all these assumptions, all these beliefs that were formed in our minds through all the years, not from the years that we were drinking, from like, oh, it made me more confident when I was 22, to even back into the, these territories when we're much younger, about how our parents are talking about it or going about it or showing us examples and stuff like this. It's psychologically just really fascinating to me. And I think when you do go to decide to take a break from alcohol, you're going to learn so much about yourself. It's such a reflective journey that will really bring you back to your intuitive core about like who you really are, what you really want, what you really need in life, because these answers are coming out at such a questioning, so much reflection about it, and who you're evolving into. So I've seen people, go alcohol free and then completely change their careers, completely change their lives, go after long lost dreams that they never even knew that they had, because of how deep the work can really be. And this isn't even, we're not even talking about people who are, on the street with a brown
Yeah.
bag. Like, so it's really fascinating to me how alcohol is this like open invitation to really kind of understand your psyche on a whole new level.
Well, I think that if you're in a career you don't like, or a relationship you don't like, or whatever's going on, and people then come home on in an evening and they have a glass of wine, or or a bottle of wine, whatever they have, and then they blow it all out on a weekend. And really, what might be going on there is that they're not dealing with the situation that they're unhappy with, whether that be their work, they're overworked or whatever. And so they're stressed out and they go to the alcohol, and the alcohol dumbs their senses for a while, numbs them down, and they don't feel it. And then they wake up in the Monday morning, they feel completely shit, but they go back in the cycle. And if you remove alcohol from that, then you now have the opportunity to, well, the alcohol is not numbing those feelings. So if I'm not numbing the feelings, I have to be present with those feelings. And now I have the opportunity to explore those feelings. And in that exploration, is I think is the discovery. It's maybe why you call the book euphoric, because that is the discovery I think you're talking about. It's like, now I have this, I'm no longer suppressing what I don't like in my life. I'm confronting it, and I go, what is it I need to change? um which is, it's actually, when you think about it, it's deep work, isn't it?
And it's like it turns you on into what you really need to take care of yourself, both from, a human needs perspective, but also like what you really want, and to stop lying to yourself that everything's okay, and that, whatever you're putting up with, whatever mediocre situation isn't fulfilling at the core of it, that you want more. And that's okay to say. And I'll just give you one example. I had wanted to write a book ever since I was a little child. Like I revered writers. I loved reading. I would write short stories and plays when I was younger, poems, start novels. And I noticed that just as I start upticking my drinking in college, my writing starts to dry up. And I'm not even really journaling anymore. I just think there's like a block, right, to like that true honesty that you need. And as the years continue and the years continue, I stopped drinking at 30, by the way. So as the years continue in my later 20s, I never lost the dream of wanting to write a book. And I remember I was one Christmas Eve, I was talking with my sister-in-law, and she asked me like, what is one goal that you have that if you could just die doing this one goal, you'd be happy? And I said it almost like in desperation, like if I could just write a book, I would be happy. And I tried every New Year's. I made a resolution. This is the year I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write 30 minutes every week. And I do it the first week in January and then never again. It was so much easier to open a bottle of wine than write the next great American
Yeah.
novel, right? I didn't have the discipline. I didn't feel the creativity. I felt just so blocked with it. And all of a sudden, I remove alcohol from my life in 2018, and my writing comes back with a vengeance. I'm journaling voraciously. My creativity is there. My intuition is there. And I'm sitting on a beach one day in Hawaii, actually. It's my first alcohol free vacation. And the sunset is just glorious. I am just in awe. I'm so happy. And I notice the people around me are kind of like looking around and seeing if they can buy a drink as fast as possible at the little bar. And I'm like, oh my God, you're completely missing it. You're missing it in this pursuit of getting this drink. Like, this is it. This is euphoria. And it hits me in that moment. Euphoric, that is the name of your book and your business and your movement. And then literally a week later, after Hawaii, I got every single chapter of this book completely downloaded in my mind as I'm sitting in front of a computer. This is after years of writer's block, having no creativity, no discipline, anything. Now, it still took me 4 years to get the book from where that point was to get it published with HarperCollins and a book deal and all this kind of stuff. But the fact that I finally achieved that little girl's dream that I stopped ignoring, and it was so much tied to removing alcohol from my life, that is just one example of, I would have never been happy every week had I completely kept snoozing on that goal and that dream and continuing to use alcohol as a way to reward myself for
Mm.
whatever else I thought I was doing that, was right. And, I have many more books inside of me, but I have met so many women that I've coached over the years. Like I just celebrated one of my first clients, her book just came out because that was the same kind of story. She had the same long lost dream. So many women who want to launch a business, but they don't feel entrepreneurial. And then all of a sudden alcohol's removed and it's like, well, why not me? So many women who want to change careers or positions or do nonprofit work or live somewhere differently, and I work mostly with women, that's why I'm using that name, but all people obviously. It's just profound to me. It's just profound what sense of purpose and fulfillment and meaning you can develop when you're really listening to yourself and your emotions and making those shifts in your life accordingly, instead of just kind of numbing them every week, right? Because that's essentially what happens. As you were saying, the cycle goes.
But I mean, purpose, meaning, all of these things, whether they're writing a book or no matter what they are, uh, they're euphoric. They're wonderful things to do, but they're also scary things to do, because when you look at what is it I really want to do, what's the life I really want to live, that's a scary place for people to go, because they have to face, well, maybe I'm not good enough to do this. Maybe people will laugh at me. Maybe I'll fail. They have to face all those things. And that takes a lot of courage. So, congratulations. But be honest with you, it's much easier just to sit at home on a Friday night and open a bottle of wine. Because
Yep.
when you do that, you get to numb out, you watch Netflix, and you don't have to face those demons that we almost all have. But the problem is, if you never face the demons, you never cross the street to the other side and end up creating the life you want to live. That's entirely different from the life you were denying yourself, possibly.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And you know what's so beautiful about this journey and why I just see it, a lot of people don't understand how removing alcohol helps you, fulfill all your dreams,
One.
right? They think I'm putting two, things that
Yeah.
don't go together in the same thing. But I have seen it over and over and over again. And I think what happens when you reevaluate alcohol, when you've been the kind of person who always pours a drink on a Friday night, and now on a Friday night you're having a club soda or some other mocktail, and you go to a bar and you order a mocktail, or you even tell your friends at a sports party, oh no, thanks, I'm not drinking tonight. That's all building your courage. Like,
The
that's courageous to say, I'm going alcohol free or I'm not drinking in a world that basically demands that you drink. That builds that courage muscle. That builds that confidence. And every day you show up for yourself and show up for that future version of yourself. So, future version doesn't have to wake up on Monday morning feeling blah. That builds the confidence as well. Like, oh my gosh, 3 weeks without alcohol? That's amazing. 6 weeks? Like, 6 months? Like, that's where that inherent, like, I never thought I could do this and I'm doing it, and it starts to spill over into all those other areas that you might feel that same kind of fear, like, I don't know if I could write a book, I don't know if I could launch a business. So it's almost, to me, like, I think this journey inherently gives you these gifts, and these gifts aren't just for the alcohol free journey. It's not just meant for you to be brave to go to a bar and be able to order a mocktail. It's almost as if these gifts are meant for something bigger, are meant to prepare you for what you're really here to do on this planet. And it's this bundle that you get, and I just think of it like a little knapsack. Universe just blessed you with these incredible gifts. The creativity, the intuition gets so deepened. Like, why do we get all these gifts when we decide to remove alcohol for a period in our lives? What are we supposed to use all of them for? What is this heightened intuition supposed to be for? This confidence, this courage? And I think it answers the very question that you brought up of, like, yeah, it's going to be scary to go after what you really want in life. It's going to be terrifying. But you are now that much braver, that much more confident, that much more in tune with your higher self. All these beautiful things that came as a result of just the questioning that you started.
It seemed all the conversation prior to this that I've heard about alcohol speaks of all the reasons why you shouldn't drink alcohol, because of all the negatives. And by the way, people should be very aware, but it's all talking about the negatives. And I think you're approaching it from a perspective of the gifts it brings you. And you've reminded me of a story. And I was probably similar. I was about 30 years of age, and it was a Christmas story also. And it never left me. But my eldest son, who's now getting married next year, and he's 31 years of age. So
Congratulations.
he was our first son. So he was very small at the time, maybe two or something like this. So it's Christmas Day. We're having family and friends over to our house. And of course, there's lots of drinking going on. And I'm the non drinker. And so I don't know. Like, it had been said to me, Paul, hey, relax, have a drink, whatever. And I was going, yeah, maybe I should. And I would drive everywhere, so I couldn't drink. But this was in our home. So family, friends over in our home. And so it's obvious. And I had decided that this was the day I was going to see what this was like. I would have had my glass of red wine at dinner, but that would have been done. I said, no, today I'm going to go with the flow. I'm going to relax. I'm going to join in with everyone. And I'll see what this fun is all about. So it's maybe 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. It's Christmas Day, and lots of alcohol has been consumed. I haven't. No, I had my glass of wine at lunch. I've had nothing else, but it's in the back of my mind that this is the day I will do it. So we're all partying in the house, and I look around and I realize that my youngest boy, Jack, who I say was a couple of, very small child at this stage, I couldn't see him anywhere. I didn't know where he was. And no one else knows, because everyone else has been drinking all day and so nobody, and I notice he's missing. So I go, where the hell is he? So I leave the room where we're all kind of partying in, across the hall into the playroom. I look into the playroom and he's not there. And then there's only small light on the playroom, and then there was a small table where he would play at. And then I saw these feet sticking out beneath the table, and I looked over, and he's sitting under the table. Now he's only a couple of years old at this stage, so obviously all the noise and the chaos had, he didn't really love it. So I said, "What are you doing, buddy?" And he had a little book in his hand. He was reading his book. I said, "Come on, sit up." So the two of us sat up on the couch together in the room. Everyone else in the room, and we sat there. I guarantee he doesn't remember this story, but I sat down with him and I said, "Here's some up in my lap." And we opened the book and I read with him. And I remember it, to me as a father, it was such a beautiful moment. But I remember thinking afterwards that had I chosen to go drinking with everyone else, I would have missed that moment with my son. And I don't know if you have children or but people listening, children. I mean, I say this man is now 31 years of age and he's getting married next year, has his own home, the whole shebang, you know. So he's a full blown adult at this stage. But I can still picture him, and I can picture the two of us sitting down beside each other with the noise in the other room, like closed over the door because it was so noisy. And we read that book, and I just thought to myself, this is one of the most precious moments of my life. And had I been drinking in the other room, I never would have experienced it.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. Like that really gets the whole point of it, you know? It's this presence, it's this quality of life. And I'm trying to have children myself right now too, but I've heard from so many parents about like the presence and the depth
Mm,
of the closeness. And instead of feeling like child caring is this thing you have to get through as fast as possible to put them down so then you can then have the glass of wine, it's like,
mm.
no, this is it. This is actually like what life is about. And I think that's like just so beautiful to show the depth of a moment and how special a moment that can be.
On a very practical level, what are some of the steps that you take people through? So, if in this conversation you have inspired anyone to go, "Oh, maybe I would try that." To me, I think the interesting angle on this, I'll repeat it because I think it's important, because I think everyone will be thinking that this conversation is about problem drinking. And this conversation has not been about problem drinking. It's been about what we call normal drinking, and it's been about the opportunity, not the problem of the drinking, but the opportunities in life you might be missing by a relationship with alcohol. Where do you start with people? What's the journey like for people?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's very intuitive and reflective, right? So it's just starting to get very honest with yourself and how you feel. Some people start just even recognizing the way alcohol isn't helping them show up the way that they want to, whether it's your health, whether it's in parenting, whether it's in your job or your career, profession. Really asking yourself, is this, I have this huge list of entrepreneurs and leaders that I admire that don't drink. And it's like, why do you think they got there? You know what I mean? It's like this thing that we want in our life, a sense of purpose, a sense of meaning, a sense of impact, a sense of success, a sense of legacy. Even a lot of those things matter way more to us at the end of the day than like a little buzz from a cocktail or something like that. And so I think that's the reflective part of it, is just asking myself, like, well, am I willing to see, not am I willing to quit forever, never touch it again, because then all of a sudden the rebel in the brain goes, no, no,
Mm.
no, we're not signed up for that. But am I willing to see what would happen, to see what I'm capable of if I took some time away from alcohol? I can always go back. It's always there. It's not going away, right? And so what usually happens is, people walk through an experience to take a break. And we always call it a break. It's not a forever, and everyone decides what that looks like. Could be a month, it could be 2 months. I think 2 months is really going to show you how it feels with your body and really rebalance a lot of things, because just a few days off alcohol is not enough time usually to get all those things. Sleep needs to rebalance, all this kind of stuff. And one of the reasons my book is called Euphoric is, in addition to the sense of purpose and meaning, just your mood will change. Just 4 weeks off alcohol will completely change your mood. You'll have so many more highs, so many less apathetic and low and boredom moments. Like, you really appreciate the world in a different way because it does so many neurochemical changes, actually. So, taking a break from alcohol and recognizing that, you're building this new kind of lifestyle away from it, definitely, get the mocktails and the alternative drinks that really will help with the ritual of it that I said it was so important earlier. But then at the same time, recognizing that's where a lot of people get stuck is that they take a break from alcohol, but they never worked on the inner beliefs. So they were doing the habit change all right, but they didn't work on these beliefs. So I love my book for this reason. For example, there's journaling questions at the end of each week that it's guiding you through. There's an 8-week program in it, and it actually asks you to uncover all this stuff, all these assumptions, all these beliefs that you have about alcohol, and start rewriting a new story for yourself today. Not the 20-year-old version of yourself, not the 17-year-old version of yourself, but today, and start to renegotiate some of these things that have been previously believed about alcohol. Because this is what I truly believe, and I've seen so many times over and over again. If you can change this stuff in the subconscious mind, the desire for alcohol goes away. So it's not about I can drink, I'm not allowed to drink. It's not anything to do with that. It's I don't desire it. It doesn't come up. It's not something I ever think about. And think of someone who used to smoke cigarettes when they're in college, and today you couldn't pay them to smoke a cigarette. Like it's just disgusting to them, right? The desire is completely gone. The illusion of cigarettes has been completely popped for them. And that's such a cool place to arrive at because then that's total freedom. Should you choose to have a drink in Christmas and New Year's every once in a while, that's fine. Like, do what you want to do. But now you're not being pulled by all these beliefs that you don't even know live in your subconscious mind to drink this drink that you know isn't serving you at the end of the day. It's like you're clean, you're clear. The desire is completely gone, and you can live life doing what you really want, which I think is really cool. And that is, the ultimate, I think, place to arrive, but it takes time. So this could be a multi-month process. Some people could even take years because it could be a lot of things that they're bringing up to the surface and things like that. But I think it's just so worth it. But honestly, if someone's listening to this and they're like, I just want to try something, try a break. Try like even 3 days. It's not going to be revolutionary, but it's going to start building something, a muscle in you that hasn't been built yet before, to even see how you feel. Because when I first started and I did 3 days without alcohol, I felt uncomfortable, right? You could imagine how that would feel uncomfortable for someone. But then that question was there, like, why do I feel so uncomfortable in my own skin? Why should I need a drink like this to feel better? Like, what's really going on at the root of my life right now to feel so uncomfortable? And so it's just a brilliant, again, way to get back to so much reflection and so much self discovery about what you really want to do. And then feel free to use my book, euphoricbook.com. You'll be able to find it in any country that I think most countries. I don't think we deliver in Africa and Asia, but most Western countries it's available. And there'll be guidance for you to walk you through yourself, like a break like this, to do also the belief work and belief change, because I think that's really cool and important. And then, for me, at the end of the day, it's not about what you're giving up or what's missing. It's like, this is a process to figure out what you want most in life and to see this as a journey to actually guiding you to that. And in that, that's where all fulfillment lies. That's what, the real joy comes. That's what really gives you that sense that my life mattered and had meaning and things like that. And then alcohol just becomes this little small thing in your rearview mirror, as you really build a life based on what you want versus the things that we accept. And I think you mentioned earlier, people aren't happy in their careers or their relationships. And I think a lot of times it's because we don't even believe it's possible to have a career that we're happy in. We need to make money, right? That's like the default kind of expectation. And I think it's a real journey of self-worth to be like, oh no, actually the things I desire are possible for me. And they're going to take work and they're going to take a lot of intention and dedication, but they are possible for me. And I'm going down that road.
I think something you said that struck me as really important is that you give up alcohol for 3 days or something, and then you begin to feel the withdrawal symptoms, but you dig deep and you ask yourself, hey, what's going on here? What am I really feeling? And what are the beliefs? What are the thoughts that I've inherited about alcohol that are standing in the way? Because I imagine that if you don't confront those underlying thoughts and address those, if you don't acknowledge those at that point, you're going straight back to the glass of wine. There's no question about it.
And mine was boredom. So I had to answer that question for myself. Why do I feel so bored? Right. And that's the quickest thing. Any distraction. So whether it's alcohol, social media, TV, like all those things, really, like a lot of times it's that unease, restlessness, and boredom that we feel. And yet, like Albert Einstein said it the best, that boredom is the mother of all invention. Like without being bored, we were bored as kids and we climbed trees and we put our roller skates on and we invented plays and we did so much when we were younger. We created joy, we created fun. And we can do that as adults as well. And I have, guidelines in my book about how to start creating fun and what to do on Friday and Saturday nights and things like that. But I think that exploration, even of what brings me joy, what is fun for me organically, right? Without some stimulant in my mind making it seem like this is fun, that answers those deeper questions then of what actually fulfills me. And I can say now I'm 7.5 years alcohol free since this story started, and I don't feel bored anymore. I can have some, kind of restless, maybe Sunday afternoons sometimes, feeling that kind of lull in time. But because of what I do for my work, for my passions, for the kind of life that I've built, I don't feel that deep existential boredom at all anymore.
Well, that's because you're pursuing something you love to do, and like, hey, we all need rest, and we all need to take time off and chill, but that's entirely different. I saw because the boredom can come from apathy, from a disinterest in life or something, which is different to going. It's a rainy Sunday afternoon. I'm going to put my feet up on the couch. Like that's a whole different experience, I imagine.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, I, you know, I started off this conversation going, I'm not sure how people will react to it, but I think it's, I mean, I would say on reflection now, we haven't criticized alcohol. You know, the conversation has just been about the possibilities of what it might be holding you back from, and what might be capable for you if you were to at least test an alcohol free lifestyle. So I know you've mentioned them already, but you can point people where they can find you. So there's the book, obviously, but you also have, like, if people want group coaching or one-to-one coaching, you do that sort of stuff online, etc. So maybe just talk through the type of resources that are available to people, because I do imagine some people are thinking, I will need some support on this.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so important. And to get around like minded people who are doing the same. So
Yeah.
I have a signature process that I walk people through to completely remove that subconscious desire to drink and then find that deeper sense of purpose and meaning. And right now, we actually have these signature processes housed in a club call experience. So it's a membership experience. So it's a very low monthly fee. I believe it's 62 a month or so. And depending on different sales and offers that
Mm.
we got going on, you might find something better out there. But it's all found on my website, euphoricaf.com. And we have live coaching that comes with it. So you can get, weekly coaching to just come in and explore and be like, oh, I really, was trying to be alcohol free, but I caved or something, or I was at this party and they made me feel uncomfortable, all the nuances of the situations that come up. I think it's so beautiful to get coached on and explore. And so we have live coaching, we have all the courses and curriculum, daily modules that you can go through, workbooks that you can do and journal through, and just getting live support too in our community forum, which I think is just really brilliant as well. So that's called Euphoric the Club, and it's housed at euphoricaf.com.
So I think that sounds super, because often the challenge is you have these experiences and you think it's just you, and then you turn to a group, you go, no, we all feel like that, and you go, oh, so that's just part of the journey. Oh, okay, I'm on the journey, and I will experience this. It's just part of the journey. It's not a big problem. I will stick for anyone. I will stick all those links in the show notes, and this seems to me like there's a huge amount of resources there, and anyone who has any interest, I would encourage them to at least try it out, to explore it. It won't hurt to at least investigate a little bit more and see how you get on. Caroline, I think, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I think if one or two people from this were willing to explore the relationship with alcohol, it would have been an hour very well spent. So thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. This was a brilliant show. I had so much fun talking to you.
Thank you so much.